There was a day I'll never forget. I was driving home from work, replaying a conversation in my head. Someone had made a small comment, barely even a critique, but it landed like a punch in the gut. I smiled when they said it, laughed it off, but the second I got in my car, I could feel it. The heat rising in my chest, my jaw clenched, and thoughts started to spiral like you know they can. And the longer I drove, the angrier I became. But I wasn't really mad at them. I was mad at myself for letting it get to me. That drive home became a turning point because I realized something. If one small comment could throw off my entire day, I wasn't in control. And that's when I started asking the hard question. Well, who's actually in charge here? This video is part 2 of our deep dive on self-awareness. And in part 1, we talked about what it means to observe yourself without judgment, to recognize your emotional patterns, and to start creating distance between stimulus and response. But awareness alone isn't enough. It's possible to be highly self-aware and still stuck. Because self-awareness without ownership leads to cycles of blame, overthinking, and ultimately frustration. So today we're talking about what happens next. We're talking about taking radical ownership over your internal world. Awareness isn't the end, it's the beginning. Just because you named a pattern doesn't mean you escaped it. Think about how many times you've said, I know I always do this when I'm stressed. I'm aware I tend to shut down when things are overwhelming. I've always been this way. But I want you to remember this. Self-awareness becomes self-sabotage when you use it to explain your behavior as opposed to change it. Ooh, hey, Aaron, you ain't had to read our mail like that. Well, you clicked on the video. We've all met people that can analyze themselves endlessly, and yet nothing ever shifts. Because awareness is comfortable, ownership is not. Ownership asks me to stop rehearsing the story and start rewriting it. It asks me to say, I am not responsible for what formed me, but I am responsible for what I do next. There's a mindset that separates the emotionally mature from the emotionally reactive. And it's the simple thought that everything happening inside of me is mine to manage. Not mine to blame on childhood, not mine to project on other people, not mine to use as justification for unhealthy behavior, mine to manage. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending that everything's fine, of course not. But it does mean that you become the manager of your inner world. You notice your anger, but you choose not to spew it. You feel triggered, and instead of spiraling, you choose to get curious. You feel a moment of anxiety, and rather than outsourcing your calm to other people, you ground yourself in truth. This is real emotional leadership. It's when you stop outsourcing your peace to other people's behavior. Because the moment you say, I'm angry because I can't be happy until you've given away your power. Ownership says, what's coming up in me is about me, and I'm the one who's going to deal with it, and I'm the one that's going to make the right decision. That's where freedom begins. And some of us, that's SUMMA, some of us love to argue with reality. We replay what someone said and think they shouldn't have said that. We relive a disappointment and think that shouldn't have happened. We look at where we are in life currently and think I should be further along by now. But here's the problem. While some of those statements may be true, every time you argue with reality, you lose. And ownership ultimately means that you don't waste time wishing things were different. You put your energy into making them different. Sometimes you have to just work with what is, and you don't have to like it, but you do have to lead through it. Because the longer you stay in resistance, the longer you'll stay stuck. Here's what ownership might sound like. That conversation triggered me. Instead of going off on them and blaming them, I'm going to get alone with me and figure out what part of me still needs healing. Or it sounds like, I lost my temper in that situation. That's on me. And I'm gonna do what I need to do to repair it. Notice what those statements have in common. They don't deny the feeling, but they put you in the driver's seat. Ownership isn't about pretending that everything's fine. It's about acknowledging what's real and choosing how you respond. It's ultimately shifting from they made me feel blank to I felt blank and I'm responsible for what I do with it. It's the shift from this always happens to me to this is happening. What can I learn from it as to not repeat it? I've often said that thoughts come into your mind uninvited. Sometimes random thoughts pop into your head, and you can't control what pops into your head, but you can control what you do with the thought. Let me say that again so you don't miss it. You can't control the first thought, but you can control the follow-up. And you can't always control what life throws at you, but you can always control how you show up in it. That's the work. That's where the power is. There was a couple in counseling, and the husband was sitting down having a conversation with the counselor. And the husband explained, I don't know how much longer I can do this. We always argue, and every argument ends the same way. She says something, she makes some underhanded comment, I get super defensive, I raise my voice, and I storm out because I don't even want to be around her. And while the counselor listened closely, he started to realize that the husband was fully aware of the pattern, but felt powerless to change it. One day they're having their chat, and the counselor asked the husband, what if you didn't try to fix the feelings? And instead, what if you just paused when they showed up? The husband said, well, I'm not sure if that'll work, but I'll give it a try. Next week, here they come. Underhanded comment from the wife, but this time, the husband felt the anger rising and said to the love of his life, hey, I'm gonna take a minute. He went on a walk, gave himself space to breathe, and sat with that emotion. And when he returned back to the house for the first time in a long time, the argument didn't escalate because the husband had uncovered a truth. Ownership starts with a pause, not the reaction. It doesn't start with the justification. It doesn't start with the blame. The pause is where transformation begins. And if you don't get anything else from this video, I want you to be reminded of this. Protecting your peace is your job. If you've ever said, they ruined my day, let this be your wake-up call. No one has that kind of power unless you give it to them. Your inner world is your responsibility. Your peace is your job to protect. And the more you practice ownership, the more unshakable you become. Not perfect and not always calm, but rooted in peace. The hardest person to lead is you. And when you start learning how to lead yourself, you stop needing the world to be easy in order for you to feel okay. And that is where real freedom is. If this message hit home today, don't just move on, sit with it, replay it, and ask yourself, where am I still blaming instead of owning? What story am I rehearsing that I need to rewrite? Where do I need to pause instead of react? And if you're bold enough, drop one of those answers in the comments. You never know who might be going through the same struggle and who you can help. If you haven't seen part 1, we'll link it here. Go back and watch that. And remember, you don't need to control the world around you, just the one within you. Always remember that growth is a journey. It's not a destination. I'm in it with you, and I'll see you on the next one.